I'll intro myself, the webinar, and then kind of level set everybody who either was or was not attending the last two webinars. I'm Chris Boyd. I run Network Depot. We are an IT support company out of DC who specializes in CMMC and compliance. It's naturally being in DC, we have a lot of government contractors as clients, and CMMC kind of came on strong 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And at that point, we became what's called an RP, which is a registered practitioner organization. So we're legally allowed to give advice about CMMC. That was like 6 or 7 years ago. And then CMMC kind of did what the government did, and it took its time. And then as of November 10th last year, Rule CFR 48 passed, and CMMC became an actual thing. CMMC is nothing exactly new. It evolved from DFARS into NIST 800-171, and then CMMC directly inherited those controls. We're going to be speaking to that today, kind of what those controls are. It's 110 controls, 320 sub-objectives, over 14 families or control groups. We're going to get into that. This is specifically going to be speaking to level 2 CMMC. CMMC level 1 is only 14 controls. It's kind of like good housekeeping. And you'll see that that's like on every government contract out there. Level 2 is based around handling, controlling, and kind of safeguarding the flow of CUI, which is the most important acronym of all the million acronyms out there. It's Controlled Unclassified Information. It's not quite like top secret information, but it's information that's sensitive enough that the government gives a shit. And so they're like, hey, we're going to come up with this framework to control it. And that's, you might think, I'm a sub of a sub of a sub, Chris, and because of that, you're the soft target, and so that's why they're cracking down pretty hard. I think there might be what, Matt, 300,000 government contractors in the DIB who might need some level of CMMC, and probably
That's right.
about 80,000, I think, who are going to need level 2. So
That's right.
they're going to look for the soft targets, which is the lower you are down on that tree is probably the more likely you are to be a target of this. So that's what we're finding is kind of represented on these calls. The National Association of Government Contractors, the NAGC, is the number one representation of government contractors in the U.S. I think they represent 120,000 government contractors, and we are the official IT and compliance partner of the NAGC, and they've asked us to come kind of do a three-part webinar series on this topic that everybody's curious about. So that's what we're here to do. Like Matt said, the aim of this webinar series is to hopefully by the end of today have all your questions answered, and you
Yeah.
guys feel very, very comfortable moving forward into kind of this otherwise unknown space. So that's what we're here to provide today is context on CMMC. Level 1 is kind of like good housekeeping. Level 2 is what we're going to be speaking on today. Mostly that involves the audit. Level 1 is self-attestation. Level 2, that's an audit by a C3PAO, which is a certified third-party assessor organization. And we're going to be talking about like how to prep for that audit, what that audit actually looks like, what to do after that audit, how often you get audited, what do you got to do after, like that sort of stuff. Anyway, that's the goal for today.
Cool. And guys, just by the way, I just wanted to throw this out there. If you go to YouTube, our YouTube channel is Network Depot MSP, Mike Sierra Papa. You'll see us there, and all of these webinars will be recorded. And so if you want to go back and watch the old ones, feel free to do that. This one will be sent to our video editors after today, after the recording is finished and pushed out to their next couple days. So just keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Chris, let's jump right into what the CMC landscape looks like. So we talked about what it is. We talked about who it affects.
Mhm.
We've talked about kind of a couple different paths you can go to get compliant, and it really depends on where your company currently is. If your company already has SOC 2 compliance or is already along the lines of HIPAA, if you're in the medical field, a lot of these controls, especially the security controls, overlap. And so in that case, we would probably want to do more of like an audit in the beginning and then sort of remediate any gaps that are left to reach CMMC compliance. Whereas if you're a smaller org, which I think, at least from the calls that I've conducted in the past few weeks during these webinars, uh, probably most people on this call, small organizations, 1 to 20 staff, likely not really up to any standard at all, maybe just starting out the business, Totally fine. In that case, we'd want to talk about building out your infrastructure first, creating maybe a CUI enclave, maybe taking the whole org into scope, and then prepping you guys for the audit. Okay, we've talked about that before. That's part two. If you guys want to watch all the info on that, that's on our YouTube channel. Today is the last part. What does the audit entail? How do you
Yeah,
prep
man.
for it? What does it look like? Who does the audit? Can just anybody get audited? Is it a government org that does it? Chris, take it away. Talk about it.
Well, I want to get some feedback from the attendees. I think the first webinar series that we did, it was kind of an unknown of who made up, the constituents of the webinar. And I think Matt and I are used to speaking to clients who are coming from SOC or ISO and getting them level set to and aligned to CMMC level 2, the NIST 800 standards. That seemed to kind of not be the case. It seemed to be, like Matt said, more of a building phase. And so, can I get a raise of hands in the chat or whatever? Who here has started their CMMC journey? Okay. Three. It's only a handful. It's only a handful. Um, I would say less than, fewer than half. Fewer than half of you guys raise your hands, but fewer than half of you guys have started your CMMC journey. And that's what we're finding. So the whole first webinar, it was the process of becoming CMMC certified. It was a 5-step process. First step, talk to your MSP, who's likely going to be your number one vendor. Like, they're the most involved in getting you guys kind of through this
Yeah,
process and
absolutely.
setting up the architecture, setting the infrastructure, doing the policies and documentation and gathering the evidence. That's mostly your MSP. And the second step is an assessment. Now, for you guys who didn't raise your hands, haven't really started, it's less of an assessment and more of a build. And so that's what we targeted the second webinar series about. And that was, okay, well, if I am to build an infrastructure to contain CUI, what should I do? What infrastructure should I do? And so I want to speak kind of less in broad blanket statements and more in specifics. It's either Prevail, which is an email and file enclave, GCC, which is Microsoft Government Community Cloud, which is usually for your whole org, not an enclave. It's like your whole org would be there, all your staff would be there. Or it's a VDI, which is a virtual desktop infrastructure within GCC itself. And we've been talking to a lot of different people. Well, not really me too much, but the feedback that Matt's gotten is that people are looking to just launch, not necessarily remediate. And that would be the third step. So it's just building. And so I want you guys to build with intention. And what's the end goal here is to get compliant and stay compliant. And so let's start with the audit and work our way backwards to where you are. What do you have to do in order to pass this thing and stay compliant so you can continue bidding on contracts? Okay, that's the goal of today. So the audit, like I said earlier, is conducted by a C3PAO. Okay, it sounds like C3PO, very Star Wars, but it's a certified third-party assessor organization. So not everybody can conduct an audit, right? And most people might think, well, that's an arm of the government who must be doing this, who must be conducting this audit. And you would be wrong. It's not an arm of the government. It's an independent organization. It has historically been governed by the Cyber AB, which is a cyber accreditation body. That's the governing body of CMMC, and they have different roles and govern the ecosystem. Like the RPO that I mentioned earlier, we had to go through registration. I had to go through registration, become an RP. That on April 1st is actually transferring control from Cyber AB to ISACA, which is a much larger, kind of, I think, better positioned for this. But C3PAOs, I think it is important to mention, not very many of them. Matt, what's the latest? Fewer than 100.
Yeah, it's like 80 something now. It's C3PAO is an organization that can assess you.
Yeah.
There's
And
none out
there
there.
are fewer than 100
Yeah, for
in the
300,000
nation.
contractors.
And there's, like, yeah, 300,000 of you guys who need CMMC. Now, the studies, like I said, show probably 80,000 of you need CMMC level 2. So you'll be handling some CUI or CUI. If I say, I'm just going to say CUI. But yeah, it's CUI. So 80,000 of you guys have to pass through 80 C3 PAOs. Not great odds. Not, not a fast moving system that's been built. Hopefully, it gets a little bit faster with the transfer of power to ISACA, but I think that might be wishful thinking. Maybe a longer runway, I think, than maybe you would like. So first and foremost, I say that because time plays a role here. Okay. What I've seen, and I'm sure Matt would back me up, and it sounds like you guys probably would back me up anyway. It usually, like becoming CMMC certified, usually does not matter to you until you see it on a contract that you want to bid on.
Yeah. Fair enough. Why would it? You know?
Why the hell would it? That's what we've seen. So usually our engagements are exploratory in nature until it's, I need this yesterday. Like
Yeah. And then
that's
it's
kind of
we're
the,
sprinting against the clock. Yeah. That's
yeah, overnight it matters because it's on the contract, or in order to renew an existing contract you might have, you
you
need
need
it.
it. Yeah.
And that's what we've seen. And so time is a variable here. And so let's talk about what that runway would look like. If it's audit and then working your way backwards, just scheduling the audit, getting on a C3 PAO schedule is, you're looking at a 3 month, booking window. And if you're anything like I am, and like I would advise our clients, you would want to do a mock audit first. You don't want to spend, and this is not a price that is set by me. It's not a price that is set by the government. C3 PAOs are private companies. They're private companies. They're out there to make money. Okay. And so they're going to set their own price. And the product that they sell is an audit. Well, wouldn't you think it would be nice if maybe they had two products? So they have a mock audit as well, right? So they sell an audit and they sell a mock audit. The audit is usually around 30K, depending on your size of your company and which path you go down, like the Prevail GCC or GCC VDI. GCC VDI, a shortcut back to the last webinar, is by far the easiest audit. Okay. And so C3PAOs like those audits. They take 2.5 days. It doesn't take very long. The
Yeah.
VDI knocks out a ton of controls and it makes the process go pretty quickly.
Not to dump
Uh,
on Prevail. We just had a client pass with Prevail, but it can be done.
yes,
So
that was big. That was big news for them. They just
yeah,
passed Champagne Moment. I'm sure they
a
wouldn't
couple
mind
days
us
ago.
sharing.
Yeah.
Metronome, they're in DC or at Northern Virginia. Um, but yeah, they just passed level 2. What was that, last week?
Yeah.
Um,
A few days ago, something,
yeah,
but
exciting for them. I
yeah.
think we wrote a press release, or we were writing a press release about it on our website. Check it out, whatever.
It'll be
Um,
somewhere.
anyway, they were using Prevail and they passed, and that was actually a pretty quick audit as well. I won't get into that. But yeah, the runway there is about 3 months. So, okay, if you want to become CMMC certified, even if you had all the evidence and all the infrastructure and all the policies and all the artifacts and everything crossed off the list, all the check boxes were checked, you're still looking at 90-day runway until you get the stamp. And I
Yeah.
would strongly recommend a mock audit. So it's like 90 days till the mock audit. You fix what you need to fix if there's anything, and then you have the real audit. The mock audit is going to be 15K, something like that, half the price of the real one. So the audit itself, I mean, that sucks, but that's just the reality is it's going to cost. And look at the supply and demand chart. There's 80 of them and 80,000 of you. So they're going to charge what they want.
Charge whatever they want. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be about a $45,000 kind of all in price, even if you're small, even if you're, fewer than 10 people, you're still going to be looking at a 45K audit. Now that's once every 3 years. Okay. So I don't think it's a depreciating thing on the books. You can't, amortize that out, but and they don't take payment plans. So, but yeah, I mean that's a real hard cost. I think a lot of people had that question. So I'll hover there, like probably about 45K mock
Yeah.
audit, real audit, and you're looking at about 3 months to the first one, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how much you need to remediate after the mock. 2, 3 weeks
Yeah.
after that, you'll have the full. So maybe 4 months. You have everything buttoned up. You reach out to the C3PAO. They say, okay, well, I'm going to send you a secure SharePoint link, and you're going to have to drop all your stuff in there. Okay, that means you have to have all your stuff. So your stuff has to be ready at that point. And we're going to talk about what stuff means, but you have to have all your stuff ready at that point pretty much. Um, but yeah, that's, that's what you'd be looking at in terms of like working your way backwards, that first step.
I think it's
So,
important to kind of level set here too that level one does not require an audit. I have had that question a couple of times where people were wondering like, hey, how do I get assessed for level one? It's like level one's a self-assessment. With level two, it's a real assessment every 3 years, a self-assessment every year, and they require continuous compliance. So we're going to
mhm,
talk about control drift today, like what could fall out of compliance and how to keep that in scope. But let's start. Let's go really deep into the audit, Chris. What are they testing? What happens the
mhm.
day they show up at the door? We've talked about this before, but let's get into that.
Yeah, I find that this kind of helps a little bit if you have a visual. I'm not gonna like share my screen or whatever, but if you go on like networkdepot.com, it's on our resources CMMC page. You can just like scroll down and you can kind of follow along a little bit more visually. But picture 14 domains, which is the control families. And I don't know how technical that I should really go in here or like how much I should reserve for a one-on-one call with you guys, but you're talking about like access control. That's the biggest family. That's the first one. AC, if you see that, it's access control. You need an access control policy. Basically, that's like who has access to CUI. Who has access in your organization? How do you grant them access? What's that process look like? How do you deny them access? What's that process look like? How do you contain and ensure that access? That's a big one. That's the biggest and first that you're going to go down control group. And it's going to go down, I'm looking at it right now, but awareness and training, audit and accountability, configuration management, a bunch of nerdy, like geeky stuff, proving that you're doing that. Media protection is a big one. If you handle physical CUI, like if you go with GCC, your laptops are still in scope. If you go with Prevail, your laptops are still in scope, which means there's a physical laptop that like, okay, prove to me that this laptop is secure physically, right? So like if you have an office place, we had to do this in our office because we handle clients' laptops. You have to get under camera. You have to have a camera system. You have to have camera logs. You have to have verification that you're checking the camera. You have to have retention of those logs. You have to have door locks. You have to have keypads. You have to have multiple keypads within your office if there are different rooms that you're keeping it in. You have to have secure wiping. So if this device, you know, I leave the company, I need to make sure that it's securely wiped. It's not enough to blow away the hard drive. You need to have a secure wipe, a FedRAMP compliant secure wipe. This is all the most annoying stuff. I could go on. Well, I will go on, but it's the most annoying stuff. But you have to prove it in that audit. They're not going to come to your office. I mean, like, I guess if you had a facility like some manufacturing firms, you can't keep your, CNA machines out of scope or something like that. They're going to come down to your factory floor and they're going to look at it and they're going to see what they have access to, what they don't have access to. They're going to look at your camera systems and test all that stuff. But most of our clients, this is all done remotely. Okay. Somebody said they were from Iowa. That's where our auditor was from. So it's done remotely, but you have to demonstrate that you are accomplishing these controls. A lot of it's screenshots. So, for instance, we'll focus on an easy one. These work best with examples, so I'll sprinkle in examples. Okay, these work best with examples. And the access control policy, again, it's the largest one is where you're going to start 3.1.1. Okay, that's where it starts. 3.1.1, very sneaky of them. It's not just that, and then you move on to 3.1.2. It's 3.1.1 A, B, C, and D. Okay, so that's why there's 110 controls, but 320 sub-objectives. It's all the A, B's, and C's. And so it's not 110 yeses you're after, it's 320. And some of them have multiple screenshots that you would have to prove. So say, for instance, Matt has access to our VDI, which he doesn't, but let's just say that he does. My access control policy is going to say that Matthew Bean is an approved user and can access our CUI enclave. That's what the policy says, but the auditor is like tight. I mean, that's a Word doc. What do you actually, show me proof that he has access, and show me proof that MFA is challenging him. Show me proof that the system is locking him out after 60 minutes. If it is a dormant session for 15 minutes, show me proof that it kicked him out. All those things are screenshots. They're things that you would have to prove. And this is, again, kind of like a throwback to why I say your MSP is the most important vendor in this. Can you imagine you guys having to do this?
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
No way. You could. I guess you could. You could. You could. It is a bear to bite off. Even just that, the notion that you should go into these audits with is I am guilty until proven innocent. And so the auditor says, okay, well, Matt Bean has access to your stuff. Show me the pathway. Okay, well, he clicks on this link and he goes to a VDI. Show me when MFA challenged him. It's not a live demo thereafter either. They don't want to sit there and watch this. They want it documented. They want screenshots of MFA challenging Matt. They want screenshots of it kicking him out after an hour. They want screenshots of a dormant session kicking him out after 15 minutes. They want a screenshot of all the logs, like the log where he logged in and logged out. I need to see that log.
Chris,
Okay. Hold on, it's not enough that you see the log. When are you going back and reviewing those logs, Chris?
yeah, that's it.
It's not enough that it's even doing it there and you have a screenshot of proving it. It's okay. Well, you can prove that it does it, but you need to show me a reviewal process when you go back with your team and review this on a regular basis to make sure that there aren't irregularities. It's crazy. So now I need a timestamp of me reviewing the access control policy logs. Are you kidding me? But I'm not joking that is what they are after. And that's exactly the line of questioning they're going to go after 320 times in a row. It's going to take multiple days, but that's what it is.
Chris, we launched a live poll. People said they want to see a screen share. So I know this is kind of not what we had totally
Oh,
planned, but if
okay.
we want to get in for the next couple parts we
I
have
saw that
here,
live poll. I was like, what is that?
the last half hour, everybody's answered yes. So if you want to share
All
stuff today,
right.
we can. If you guys have access to computer, you'll be able to see this live.
Yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, so
All
let's
right.
keep going. Let's keep talking about the audit. Maybe we could show Vanta. Maybe we could show something like
Well,
that.
I'm gonna throw this up just so you guys can see it. Hold on one second. Share my whole desktop here. All right, you guys see this ugly thing right here in front of me? This is what the government provides. This is access control family 3.1.1. So this is limit system access to authorized users. This is what I was just going through. Okay. This is what the government sends you. And so these are all the A, B, C, Ds, and E's of everything. Okay. If you keep scrolling down, these are the things that you need to demonstrate that you are doing. Y'all can see this, right? Y'all can see this, right? That's my girl in Boston. All right. So you can see it's all still access control. It's a huge, huge portion of it. And you keep scrolling down and you're just like, I personally can't look at that. That is just way too gross for me. So what we have done is created our own. Um, it's nothing fancy, but this is kind of a larger access control. And you can see the main controls, the sub-objectives, and kind of like what it's based on. And by far the access control policy is the biggest. So just go into here and you can see all this. And there needs to be multiple screenshots for all of that, multiple policies for all of that. And that's just one family. And then you go down and it just keeps going. Um, there's the physical one that I mentioned. Physical security, physical protection, yeah, media protection there. This is the nerdy one, well, the most nerdy. This is when a SIEM comes into play, which is the logging of the events in your system. Um, anyway, it's just that's if you go to our website, you'll see kind of a clearer picture here. All
Maybe a slightly prettier picture of it.
There you go. I like that view. I'm like a zoom out kind of person, so I like that view. But you can see all the 14, and you can see kind of all the controls that are in there, and then you can see how heavily the objectives are weighted versus the controls. I like those views. It kind of like gives me a big picture of what I got to do. Um, maybe I'll share my screen a little bit more later. But
Yeah. Cool.
does
Thanks
that
for
does
sharing
that
that,
kind
Chris.
of give you guys a good idea of what you're walking into? Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I think it does.
And minimize the chat. There we go. Okay, cool. Thank you, Mike. Yes, sir. Um, so let's talk through it. How, Chris, would I, if that's what I need to go to audit with, really it's what you need to go to scheduling the audit with. Okay. That's a binder type, collection of evidence. They call it a body of evidence, but a body of evidence that you need to go to schedule your audit. Okay. How long does it take, Chris, to gather all that stuff? Well, first, there are two kind of schools of thought here. One, you could try to do it yourself. Okay, you could try to get all those policies together, organized together, get your SSP, which is the most important document, by the way, is the system security plan. That's going to be kind of the governing document of housing all of that stuff. So the C3PAO is going to come in and they're going to say, okay, 3.1.1A, where do I go? Show me. Where do I go? And the SSP should show them. The SSP should be kind of a glossary, table of contents type thing. It should have all of your documents all organized. If you go in there unorganized, your C3PAOs are people. I think that's also kind of, I don't know, a common misconception maybe is I
That is
thought
law. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be pretty Scantron-y. You know what I mean? You either pass or you don't. Not the case. These are human beings. They're conducted, by CCAs, which is certified assessor. Those are human beings who have opinions. They're nice, they're not nice. They're Microsoft friendly, they're Prevail friendly, they're not friendly. So these are human beings, and so the easier you can make that person, and it's just like one person. Okay, you're not going to have like two people on the call. Maybe if it's like one in training or something like that, I've seen that, but they're silent. But it's just like one person who's responsible for if you pass or fail, and so make their job easy. Make their job easy. They don't know you. They know nothing about you. They don't know what you do. They don't know your history. They don't know your staff. They don't know that, like, well, I might handle CUI. So I kind of put this Prevail thing in place. And if I handle CUI, I have a place for it. It's not good enough for them. They, you know, make their job easy. Make their job easy. The easiest place to start to kind of gather your thoughts, and it's the place that they're going to start. They're not going to necessarily look at your SSP and read it all the way through. What they're going to do is they're going to look at your network diagram. Your network diagram is the most important artifact that you have. Okay, so if you're going to spend time anywhere, spend it on the network diagram. The network diagram combines not just the topography of your network, but also combining that with a CUI flowchart. So your prime, the level above you sends you CUI. Where does it come in? Whose mailbox? Where is that mailbox? Is it hosted in GCC? Is it Prevail? Where is this mailbox? And then, okay, well, it comes with an attachment. Where does that attachment go when you download it? How do you view it? So CUI flow chart, that's what they're gonna work their way through chronologically, the flow of CUI. So make sure I've seen audits, like they call them assessments, but I call them audits. I've seen audits go sideways because the CUI flow chart was wrong. Prevail had sent over a flow chart of how it should be handled. The client used that flow chart, the prospect used that flow chart, and it was wrong. And the audit went sideways. just because one document was off. So that means that document's important. So spend your time on a network diagram, combining that with a CUI flowchart. Um, that would be a piece of advice for sure. That's where they will start. And then they're going to work their way down the AC family. And that's probably going to take all of day one. And they're going to kind of keep going. So for where to start with policy creation is, I think, an underestimated amount of time. I think most people think that you can just throw together a binder of policies and go to audit. And maybe you can do that in 2 weeks. And you're going to be in for a surprise because those policies are intertwined, they're messy, they can start boilerplate, but they all need to be reviewed and looked at, and they all need to be signed off on by the owner of the company. And that's a scary thing. I'm going to hover there. Why would your policies need to be signed off on by the owner of the company? It's because if you're representing, your policy is representing that you have the ability and the means to control CUI, and your policy says that that is in fact what you're doing, and you're enforcing that policy, and you're found non-compliant, well, then your company is subject to false claims. You're claiming something that you can't do or that you are not doing. And false claims acts, that's like the scariest, 2 words out there. Um, Maybe you're thinking, well, surely this won't apply to me. I'm not going to be audited, mid-cycle. Um, I mean, you could say that now, but I would never go to audit if I were the owner of the company. I would never go to audit until I personally read and understood every policy.
Yeah.
You have to be confident that you are going to pass that audit, that you are doing what you say that you're doing. Um, that's not that's the scary
It's not
part of
something to play
CMMC.
around with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the scary part. Um, Especially if you don't understand it to begin with. These are technical in nature. Like they're all technical controls. Um, the least technical is probably I'm putting my staff through security awareness training, SAT, like phishing campaigns, insider risk threat campaigns, training my users on stuff. That's probably the least technical thing, but you know, that's still technical. You still have to go in there and show reports and stuff that your users are going through this. Um, so yeah, most government contractors, their owners are not super technical. They are good at doing what they do.
Yeah.
And so I would highly recommend that you not, you know, downplay the policies. That is the meat of CMMC. Enforcing those policies is what your IT provider should be doing. But those policy,
Yeah.
the creation of those policies, you're signing off on it. So,
Yeah. Well, and the staff too. The staff shouldn't understand the policies as well, not just have them on paper.
hmm
Not just the owner, but yeah, especially the owner
hmm
for sure.
yeah,
Well, Chris, let's talk about other things that I say potential pitfalls or common pitfalls that we see, things that people maybe overlook. We have a few
yeah,
listed that we can talk about.
yeah, sure. So this goes back to the two schools of thought. You could try to do this yourself, or you could hire a company to do it. And if you hire a company to do it, I think probably either way. But if you hire a company to do it, they're likely to insist on what's called a GRC platform, a governance and risk platform. That's a uh, it's an application built for collecting, organizing, and linking your policies, your procedures with the necessary artifacts and evidence to demonstrate that you are enforcing those policies. So if you try to do this yourself, it's a bunch of Word docs floating all over. That's I wouldn't recommend that. That's a recipe for a nightmare. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend a GRC platform. Matt mentioned one called Vanta, which we are a Vanta partner. This isn't like a Vanta plug. This is just a GRC plug. I would highly recommend getting one. Um, it's going to
Please
make
do
your
it
lives easier. And it's going to
for
make
the
whoever is
MSP's
responsible
sake
their
as
lives
well.
easier. What'd you say?
I said for the MSP's sake, please do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's cool. I mean, like you're talking about a lot of moving parts, and it's not, the audit is a snapshot in time. At that point, those screenshots are valid. However, you need to demonstrate that you are continually enforcing those policies. And so if you have a new employee who has, access to the CUI enclave, well, you need to take screenshots of the approver in your organization, likely you, submitting a ticket saying, hey, John Doe is starting next Friday. I want to grant him access to the CUI enclave. There needs to be written record of it. And then that MSP or whoever you're submitting that ticket to has to follow those instructions, has to leave breadcrumbs that they did exactly as you said and nothing more. And then you need to go update your access control policy to add John Doe to it.
Yeah.
And then you need to update your HR policy saying that John Doe is background checked and U.S. citizen and show all the burden of evidence about John Doe. It's
And then each year,
heavy
you as
and
the owner have to certify that you are still compliant after all those things are done, too.
mhm, yeah. But yeah, that's an ongoing thing, right? That's not a snapshot in time. And so this becomes a lot easier when there's a database where all this is collected and timestamps are on it. I reviewed it. Here's the timestamp of myself and my team reviewing it. You have to have a screenshot of a calendar invite with you and your C-suite reviewing that access control policy. You need to be reviewing it regularly. And so when it comes time for your self-assessment in a year, and then certainly in 3 years, when it comes time for the C3PAO to come back in, they're going to want to see that you reviewed it. How are they going to see that? How are they going to know that you reviewed that policy? They're going to need a time and date stamp. They're going to need a screenshot of a calendar invite with you guys with a title that says, I'm reviewing the access control policy and a published version and any changes that were made. It's so annoying. Like I get annoyed like even saying it, but that's the reality. Like that's what they need to see. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, and it's not a new thing. DFARS and NIST require the same thing. If you want to do business with the Department of Defense, the Department of War, this is like national security. So they're going to want to see this stuff, and it's not joking around. There are fines, there are penalties. They shut companies down, and you
Yeah.
got to do it. So, if you want, if a piece of your revenue stream is coming from the DoD or DOW, then you got to do it. So,
Yeah, I think we should talk about that for a second. On every one of these calls, this is expensive. It's not
mhm.
by our choice. CMMC is expensive by nature. We've talked about it before with the supply and demand thing with the CMMC auditors, the
Yeah.
C3PAOs. Chris, let's talk just very briefly about the cost of doing business with the government. This is just that. It is simply an expense that you have to have if you want to continue to do business here. And you have to make the numbers make sense. So you hopped on one of the calls with me this week and talked over this. If you could just kind of rehash um, that real quick, I think it might level set it for everybody on the call.
How expensive it is.
Yeah, well, just like how much it costs and then how much, like when it would make sense and when it might not make sense to invest in this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because the audience here is likely made up of government contractors who are fewer than 10 employees.
A
Okay,
lot of
so
them. Yeah.
usually these numbers would vary wildly based on the size and scope of your organization. That whole like, I need to stand up a GCC VDI. The cost of that is going to depend on how many people, basically, or a GCC. I need to stand you up in GCC. Well, the cost that's going to vary on what I'm migrating. So I have to migrate you from your commercial tenant to GCC. So how much data and how many people and how many profiles and how many Teams chats I'm migrating over there, that's going to really move the needle. But if most of these people are fewer than 10 employees, then I can give a pretty decent answer. So, out of the gate, you're looking at whichever option you build, let's say 25K to get to the point where like, all right, my infrastructure is built. Okay, you've met with us or whomever, and you've decided that I want to go one of these three routes, and then you build it. You're about 25K deep at that point. That's non-recurring. That's just, a one-time project or whatever. And then after that, there's the policy writing. And I'm not, I mean, maybe I'm skewed because I'm running an IT company. The setup of your infrastructure is easier. I would say it's arguably easier than proving that you are enforcing those controls, the policy writing and the evidence gathering. The whole industry of a GRC platform is because how tough that is. Okay. And
Yeah, it's
Vanta,
incredibly complicated.
I just priced out a client yesterday. They're a small client. They have like a 7-person enclave. They're like 120 people, but they only have like a 7-person enclave they're building. And Vanta charges by the number of seats who are in that scope. So the 7 people, which is another reason to limit scope. That was the entire purpose of Webinar 2 was limit scope. But Vanta quoted them almost 2K a month. That was on a 3-year term. So,
Just for the GRC
a
platform.
GRC platform is one of your highest monthly expenses. And all it does is maintain evidence and policies, which means the entire industry, Vantage had $1 billion angel investment. So, like, it's hard to do that. Okay. There's a reason why this industry exists. And so, like, you really can't underestimate how difficult that is. So, we charge our clients, a flat rate for that based on number of users and the type of environment they're in. But you're looking anywhere from like 15K on the low end to 30K on the high end, something like that. Again, a non-recurring. So probably 25K. These are like actually numbers. Okay. I'm going to try to actually answer this. So 25K to get to the point where infrastructure is built and you can handle CUI. Maybe another 20K to prove that you're enforcing these controls. And then you go to audit. So you're only probably, what is that, 50, 60K in, something like that of non-recurring to get to the audit. And then you have the cost of the C3PAO, which again is 30 to 45K, depending if you go with a mock or not. So yeah, I mean, on average, you're looking at probably 100K non-recurring over, day one to probably the fastest that you could accomplish this would be 6 months, 7 months, depending on how fast you guys are moving, how busy we are, or how busy the org who is setting this up is. So 6, 7 months, you're spending 100K. I'll pause there because it's a big number, but that's reality. Um,
Yeah.
that's reality. So I would look at that. Okay, if it cost me 100K to get this thing, and then you have the cost of Vanta, 2K a month, that's recurring. You have the cost of whatever the infrastructure is. Small is Prevail, which is $36 a mailbox. Okay, so that's like a very small one. GCC, that's just Microsoft licensing, and so instead of an E5, you're paying $56 a month for an E5 license. It's a G5 license, and it's like $67 a month. Okay,
Mhm.
slightly elevated, but that's still a recurring Microsoft cost. Then you have the hosting cost within GCC, and then a GCC VDI, which would be the highest monthly recurring. That would be probably on average. That's a tough one, but like on average, like an average business, not a manufacturing business, but an average business with like normal office workers, you're looking at maybe 2 to 250 a month per
Yeah.
user. Now that's an enclave, right? And so there shouldn't be too many users in there, but that's probably the recurring that you're looking at for that. So okay, let's just say you have 4 people in a VDI, that's $1,000 a month, plus Vanta or a GRC platform, that's 3K a month, and that's before any work is done.
Yeah.
That's before we're doing pen tests. That's before we're doing vulnerability scans. It's before we're doing tabletop exercises. Before we're doing artifacts. It's before we're doing policy updates. It's before we're updating your SSP. That's before all that stuff, all those regular things that you got to do after to maintain compliance.
Mm.
The annual self-assessment. That's before that. There's a lot of work that goes into maintaining compliance, and so that's a couple grand a month. And so this whole venture is going to cost you probably. I'm not here to convince people. I'm just here to lay out the facts, guys.
Yeah.
It's probably going to cost you 100K up front, and probably going to cost you in the neighborhood of 4 to 6K a month,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just a math
something
equation. Yeah. So
something like that.
you spend $500,000 or you spend 50K a year on this and you operate on
Hmm.
10% margin, you got to make $500,000 and then it pays for
Yeah.
itself. It's just a
Yeah.
math equation. So if you think you can do that with your contracting work and you're going to make way more than that, which I hope that you guys would be, and I think most of you guys here are extremely competent, at least from what I've seen, and are doing that or will do that in the future in this contracting world. It's cost of doing business. And if you could make that much, it's absolutely worth the time and money to do it. I don't know if it's worth the time to do it yourselves in-house. It might be smart to outsource it to a company. I'm not trying to put in a plug for us, but a company like us that can do this. There aren't many, but it will save you the headache of trying to do this stuff
Well, it's
yourself.
not like I want to touch on two things you just said. I realize we're kind of getting close to the top of the hour. I want to touch on
Yeah.
two things that Matt just said. These things have to get done. Okay. And it's your decision if you want to get it done. But if it's going to cost you 100K up front and 50K a year, plus every 3 years, you're going back to the C3PAO, writing a check. That's probably not well, I don't know. The supply and demand is probably working in your favor at that point, but I can't see the C3PAO price going down. But there will be more
Okay.
C3PAOs in 3 years, which means that they might have to get a little bit more competitive with their pricing. But it's kind of like an HOA. I can't see it going back down, but maybe it's still the same in 3 years. So factor that into it too. So your non-recurring and your recurring costs, whatever that number is, like Matt said, a math equation, whatever that number is, let's say it's 60K a year. If you operate on a 10% margin, then you have to make 600K from the government a year to pay for this. If you operate on a 20% margin, obviously it goes down, right? It gets cut in half. But figure out what that break even, that would be the biggest piece of advice that I have for people who are deciding, do I do this or do I not? Most people are coming from I do business commercial, and I have a commercial business, but I have a small wedge of my business that has federal money coming in. Okay. If that small wedge adds up to, what the profit of that would be, adds up to the cost of CMMC, that's your break even point. Anything above that, it's like, well, I'm glad I did this. Thank God I got CMMC, right? So that would be a deciding factor. But the second thing that Matt said is somebody has to do this. Could be you, could be somebody on your staff. Usually we see it about 20 people, 15, 20 people in an org. Somebody on staff is what's called an FSO, a facility security officer. That's somebody who's technical and charged with the responsibility of kind of the liaison between your org and compliance. Okay, maybe they aren't enforcing the controls, but they're usually who we talk to. That's usually our point of contact. Isn't usually the owner, it's usually the FSO at that size. When you get over 15 employees, say you get up to 25 or 30 employees, compliance becomes, depending on your setup, uh, it becomes more complicated. If your laptops are in scope, it certainly becomes more complicated. And that complication warrants what's called a CISO, but a Chief Information Security Officer. It's no longer an FSO. It does this kind of part-time on, part of their payroll is contributed to this or attributed to this. You have a CISO on staff, and the CISO, that is our point of contact when companies get larger. Um, Usually larger than 30 or 40 people. Somewhere around there, it's like that's a pretty expensive person. Part of their job is to make sure that I stay compliant, that, my cybersecurity company, my compliance company is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Um, that's a cost as well. That's a cost as well. So, but usually the people who have been on this call are smaller. So you have somebody on staff right now who you're kind of appointing as the FSO, and that's going to be the person that we're likely going to be liaising, or a company like us would be chatting with. Um, but yeah, those are probably the actual costs of CMMC.
Okay. We have just a few minutes here before we reach the top of the hour and then we finish. Guys, at the top of the hour, we'll start to answer questions. So if you have them, please put them in the Q&A section now. We'll answer them at noon. But for the last couple minutes, let's talk about, I know we briefly touched on it. Let's just really dive into what managing the compliance looks like across the time. So you've passed the audit. Congrats. Pop the champagne. It's great. Now what? You have to manage that thing. You can't fall out of compliance. Talk
Mhm.
briefly about what control drift looks like. Um,
Hmm.
how maybe a GRC platform like Vanta can help prevent that and help alert on that with all the integrations it has tied into it. And then what a person or individual or company that's hired or whatever does to manage your compliance.
Yeah. So control drift, you guys can probably imagine what that means. It means that at that snapshot in time of the audit, you met the 110 controls. However, a really easy example of a control drift would be you go hire John Doe, but you didn't update your access control policy. Or you hired John Doe and you forgot to set him up on MFA. Or you hired John Doe and you forgot to set up his conditional access policies. So, the defender's not enforcing that part of the media protection. Here's an easy example that I always use is this actually happened. Matt, I don't know if you saw this email come in over the weekend, but one of our clients, we just took him through level one. And part of level one is media protection, which means that you can't download CUI onto a thumb drive. Okay. Basically what that means, one of the controls. You can't have external media. But that's what that is. He was sitting in his airplane. Okay. All right, big shot. Sitting in his airplane and he couldn't update his flight path from his laptop to his airplane because we had enforced that policy saying that he can't use a thumb drive. And so he's sitting in his cockpit and he launches a ticket with us. And yeah, did you see that one come in, Matt?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, you're not on the after hours, but yeah, so this ticket comes in. He's like, he used some profanity, but he's like, I can't download this thing onto my thumb drive because you enforced this fucking policy saying that so we had to go into it, into his Entra and, remove him from that conditional access policy group, so that he could update his flight path. He's sitting on the tarmac. Anyway, that if not put back in place, if we didn't put Ed back in place, control drift. Okay.
Probably was sad.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So there
Yeah.
are things that are just going to naturally happen, and you have to, you have to put guardrails on that. You have to alert on that. We have to review those policies. It's called policy drift or control drift. But you have your parameters and their threshold based alerting. And so we would get that alert saying, hey, Ed is no longer in this. He needs to be in this, and it's going to keep alerting on it until we put him back in. Um, anyway, that's what control drift is. But that's a piece of why companies pay us is they don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with that either. Um, but yeah, there's a whole slew of things, man. We can get into it on a one-on-one. It varies based on which one you go with, Prevail, GCC, or VDI. What you're monitoring, what you're managing, what you're reviewing, what your action items are, how regular you are doing them. If it's continuous, managing your SIEM, managing your SOC. It's a bunch of nerdy stuff that you got to do. So, and you got to prove that you're doing it.
Gotcha. Guys, in the chat here, if you can, or if you want to just raise your hand in the chat, if you'd like to do a one-on-one consultation, we're offering those for free for NAGC members. They take about 30 to 45 minutes on the first call to kind of talk about your business and learn what you guys need. And the second one, we'll walk you through an entire custom scope. This is a lot of work on our end. Hopefully it's helpful, but please let us know. Nate Wingreen and Christopher Sylvester have sent a link in the chat to our managed compliance page if you want to fill out a web form and have us contact you that way. Otherwise, we'll be in touch via phone after this webinar. But we're at the top of the hour, so it's time to wrap things up. Chris, any last thoughts before we go into answering some of the questions that have come in?
No, man. I just want to finally kind of give a final thank you to NAGC. We had a lot of dialogue with them last summer as rules, CFR Rule 48, which is CMMC, kind of progressed through the congressional federal ruling. That was over the summer last year. And NAGC, I think, is really great. I'm not a member, obviously, but like from what I can see, very good stewards of their members, you guys. And the hottest topic out there is CMMC. And so I think that they were very proactive in getting ahead of it and asking us to speak with you on a three-part webinar series and really get into it. It's something that I felt kind of like honored to do. And so our goal from the jump was to, in sessions fully prepare you for what's ahead. Most of you guys said you hadn't started your journey, right? So it means you're starting from ground zero. You're starting from nothing. And so I hope that we've been able to answer your questions, kind of demystify what's in front of you, and hopefully offer a path forward as well. So that's our goal. If you want to talk specifically about your situation, at some point, this is all great, right? But at some point, you're gonna have to talk to somebody. And so whether that's us, whether that's somebody else, like you're gonna have to talk to somebody about your situation, what makes sense for you, what is your budget, what is your CUI flow? How, are you currently taking in any CUI? What's the contract you're waiting on? Would you like us to read your contract and what actually is required? Because it's contract by contract. Like what is your prime actually saying to you? These are specifics we can't get into on a webinar. So if you'd like to, like Matt said, book a meeting with us, it is zero pressure. I want to put you in a position where this isn't scary anymore. Maybe the numbers are, but the journey's not. Anyway, thank you guys for coming. Hopefully, this was a good use of your time.
Chris, Mike Reynoso asked in the chat, how does CMMC apply to JVs, joint ventures? Does a CMMC compliant partner flow up to the JV entity?
Oh, like a holding company owns your operational LLC or whatever, or partnership.
Partnership.
Uh, it is the entity that is representing. So when you go to fill in your documentation, it's going to be related to your cage code in sam.gov. So your sam.gov, whatever company is listed there is the one responsible. So, part of the reason you would have a holding company, right, is to keep that liability at bay. So yeah, it would be whoever's related to your sam.gov, your cage code. That's going to be tracked to your SPRS score, guys. I don't want to get too like government nerdy, but this is all tracked in your sam.gov in your SPRS score. All right, cool. You got it. But
Cool.
yeah, we manage that as well. I mean, that's something that you have to plug in. That's telling the government that you have begun. Like
Thanks, Mike.
even before the audit begins, as soon as you register with a C3PAO, they're going to send you a questionnaire and they're going to say, "What's your cage code?" And they have to plug in on the SPRS, on Pi and on SAM.gov that you have begun your journey. You are seeking CMMC certification. That's going to relate to your POAM. I won't get too into it, but like it all has to be tracked. So we do that for you too.
I so we just wait a couple minutes. If no questions, then we'll just cut this thing off.
All right. I was going to get into like maybe I don't really want to get into the POAM stuff, but some controls of the 110 are what's called POAMable. Maybe a colloquial term, but it means that I don't have that thing met yet, but here's a really detailed plan of action with milestones
On how we're
on
going to do that.
how I plan to implement that control. Some controls you can do that. You have 180 days to implement that control, but the government is kind of giving you grace at that point. Not very many controls are like that. Um, I would argue the not that important ones are like that, but we see that.
Okay, looks like no questions yet.
We answered all of them, Matt.
Guess we did. Or everyone left and we suck. No, I'm just and we appreciate you guys coming on today. I think we're gonna wrap
Yeah,
things
this
up
has been
now.
fun.
I'm gonna turn off the live stream and we'd love to do this again, guys. We'll probably be doing another webinar series at some point with NAGC. Just keep a lookout in your email. Please don't block them, so you'll see that when we announce stuff, and maybe don't block us either. Thank you all for joining,
Thank you,
and
Mike.
yeah, thanks, Mike. We'll see you guys soon.
All right, bye.
Bye bye.